Hi, this is Cecil, and in today's Yellowstone podcast, I'm going to be talking about waterfalls that you can readily see, those which are close to the road. As is so often the case, there are two ways that you can listen to or watch this podcast. One is to download it or listen to it at wherever you normally listen to podcasts. The other one is to go to YouTube, and the advantage of going to YouTube is you can follow along with a map that I've got from Google Maps, which will show you where the waterfalls are. If you search for our channel, it's called Yellowstone Tours. So go to YouTube, search for Yellowstone Tours, and do that without a space in between Yellowstone and Tours. YouTube will then ask, did you mean Yellowstone Space Tours? Say no, you just wanted Yellowstone Tours, one word. That'll bring up our channel. And then search for the Waterfalls podcast. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see the map that I have up of the greater Yellowstone area. And for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, if you could picture the southwest corner of Yellowstone National Park, and that's where I'm going to start. Now, our first waterfall is a little bit unusual because although it's really close to a road, it's not within the main part of Yellowstone that I would imagine that 99.999% of people come to see. It's called Cave Falls. And Cave Falls is a really pretty waterfall that's very close to the Bettler Ranger Station, as I mentioned again in the southwest corner of Yellowstone National Park. It's right near where Wyoming crosses over into Idaho to the west. And there is a small dirt road, which you can see on the map, which will take you to Cave Falls. And if you do take the time and the trouble to visit Cave Falls, there is actually a primitive trail that goes from Cave Falls, which is on the Fall River, to Bettler Falls, which is off to the northwest on the Bettler River. On the Bettler River. Now that is a really easy, if somewhat primitive walk. Make sure that you take your bear spray with you. But the beauty of this section of Yellowstone is that it is absolutely deserted. Every time I've been to Cave Falls or to Bettler Falls, I've had it to myself. Now, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you'll see there's a trail that takes a rather unusual route through to the John Rockefeller Parkway, which is in between Grand Teton National Park and Yellowstone National Park. That is a really interesting back road that will take you to something called Flag Ranch. But that'll be the subject of another of our Yellowstone podcasts. So picture yourself now, if you're not watching this on YouTube, entering the park at the south entrance, and you'll drive north as if you're heading up towards West Thumb, and a really short distance up the road from the south entrance, you come across Moose Falls. Moose Falls is on something called Crawfish Creek, or if you're from Utah, Crawfish Creek. And most people just drive straight past Moose Falls because they don't know that it's there. You can't see it from the road, but it is literally perhaps a 5-minute walk off the road, and it's really a delightful little waterfall. Let's carry on north now on the south entrance road as if we were going to West Thumb, and we will come across one of the more popular waterfalls in Yellowstone because it is right next to the road, and that is Lewis Falls, which is on the Lewis River. There is a place you can park. You can pull over and park your car, and most people will stand on the bridge or walk over the bridge at Lewis Falls, get a picture of the falls. But let me tell you this, there's a really cool little trail. It's not very long, and you can see it in our virtual Yellowstone Tours YouTube channel. Just go to our virtual Yellowstone Tours channel on YouTube, search for Lewis Falls, and there's a narrated hike to the falls from the road. Boy, it's only, I would guess, 200, 250 yards long, and it takes you to a really picturesque and peaceful overlook of Lewis Falls, and the trail goes through some trees. Continuing then from Lewis Falls, heading north, and I'm doing this in as logical an order as I can, we'll join the Grand Loop Road. Now, I've told you several times that the roads through Yellowstone make up a massive figure of 8. And tour companies like ours divide their tours of Yellowstone into a tour of the upper loop of the park and a tour of the lower loop of the park. So we have just joined the Grand Loop Road at the bottom or the south section of the lower loop, and we're going to turn left or west as if we were going to Old Faithful. And shortly before we get to Old Faithful, we're going to come to Kepler Cascades. Kepler Cascade is really right next to the road as well. There's a parking lot right adjacent to the road, and a cascade is basically a series of really small waterfalls where the horizontal distance tends to be greater than the vertical distance. So the waterfall falls over an extended distance compared to a pure waterfall where it'll just drop straight down. Once we've seen Kepler Cascade, let's continue on the west side of the lower loop of the Grand Loop Road. And just before we get to Madison Junction, there is a road, and it's one way heading from north to south, and this is Firehole Canyon Drive, and Firehole Falls is on Firehole Canyon Drive, and it's the Firehole River that creates Firehole Falls. And I neglected to mention that Kepler Cascades is also created by the Firehole River. Now, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, Google Maps wouldn't let me create more than 5 waterfalls in my map, probably because I'm doing this in the early spring and Yellowstone is closed. So I'm going to jump to another tab. And if we consider the Grand Loop Road again, and if we consider the massive figure of 8 that constitutes Yellowstone National Park, we are once again on the west side of the lower loop. So for those of you who don't have access to YouTube or the map, picture yourself driving in from West Yellowstone on the west side. You'll get to Madison Junction. At Madison Junction, you'll turn left, and that'll take you to Gibbon Falls. It was just a few years ago that the Park Service put in this great new parking lot at Gibbon Falls, so it's become much easier to access. And also the trail that leads down to Gibbon Falls is protected now from the road. So you don't have an issue with cars getting too close to you. If you go to our YouTube channel, we actually have 2 narrated videos on Gibbon Falls, so you can see where they are. And one of them was shot in the summer, the other one was shot in the very, very late fall with snow all over the place. So you can see what Gibbon Falls looks like in a winter environment. We'll now continue north on the west side of the lower loop, and we're going to come to the point where there is a road that splits the figure of 8 into the 2 loops. On the left-hand side, or the west side, we have Norris Geyser Basin, and then there's a road that runs to the east or the right to Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone or Canyon Village. And the next waterfall that I'd like to discuss with you would be Yellowstone's Lower Falls. Now, the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone is likely to be one of the most spectacular sights that you ever see in your life. And there's 2 major falls right near Canyon Village. The first one is the Upper Falls, the second one is the Lower Falls. Now, I'm not including the Upper Falls in this in this podcast, although I don't know, maybe I should, but you can't really see the upper falls that readily from the road. Whereas the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone lower falls, there are several vantage points, both on the North Rim Drive as well as on the South Rim, where you can stop and take a view, take a look at the lower falls. Artist Point on the South Rim is the best example of this, and then there's several viewpoints as you're doing the North Rim Drive, where you can get a look at the lower falls as well. As far as the upper falls go, there is a road that you can take to a short hike that'll take you down to the upper falls. It's not terribly long. It's not as steep as the hike that goes all the way down to the bottom of the lower Yellowstone Falls, but it's not right next to the road, and so that's why I'm not including it on my podcast on waterfalls that are right next to the road in Yellowstone. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to hop to the next tab because Google Maps once again would not allow me to add any additional destinations. And I've got the Grand Loop roads up, I've got the figure of 8 up. And so for those of you who are not watching this on YouTube, picture yourself on the east side of the Grand Loop at Canyon Village, and we're going to head north up and over Mount Washburn. As we drop down the other side, we come to Tower Fall, which is a pretty cool waterfall on Tower Creek. And it is relatively close to the road. You'll see there's a little souvenir store, convenience store type thing there. Park in the parking lot, and you can walk to Tower Fall. My best guess is perhaps 50 or 60 yards. You'll climb back in your car, and you'll continue past Tower Junction. Now, Tower Junction is where you would turn right or east to go to the northeast entrance as well as to the Lamar Valley. But if you continue straight as if you're going to Mammoth Hot Springs, also right next to the road is Undine Falls. I cannot for the life of me understand why there's never more cars parked in the parking lot at Undine Falls. It's a really, really spectacular fall. It's not a cascade, but it does have several drops, and they are precipitous drops, excuse me. And as I say, the parking lot is right next to the road. Undine Falls is on Lava Creek, and it's a relatively small river, but the falls, though, are spectacular. So it'll be on your right-hand side if you're driving from Tower Junction to Mammoth, or if you're coming the other way from Mammoth heading to the east, it'll be on your left-hand side or the north side of the road. Continue on the road now to Mammoth Hot Springs, and then picture yourself going up past the lower terraces, past the upper terraces, and you'll go past something which is called Golden Gate, which was a feat of just the most wonderful engineering in the early days when Yellowstone was first being built out. And you'll see there's a pullout just before you get to the top, just before you get to the road where the Bunsen Peak trailhead is and where Swan Lake is. There is a pullout for Golden Gate, and then a little bit further up the road, so a little bit uphill, and then also a little bit to the southwest, if you are looking at a map, you'll see that there is another waterfall that you actually cannot see from the road. You have to get out of your car, so pull over in that little pullout there. I've always called this the Glen Creek Falls because it tumbles over Glen Creek, but its formal name is actually Rustic Falls, and that's another waterfall that is really worth seeing. The last one that I want to tell you about is on the road between Norris Geyser Basin and Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. So if you picture that massive figure of 8, we're on the road that splits up the lower loop from the upper loop. And when you're leaving Norris heading east, not too far away from Norris, you'll see a little side road off the road between Norris and Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. And on that road, you'll find another cascade, and this is Virginia Cascade. It's a little difficult to get a really good view of it from standing on the road level, but please, I caution you, be really, really careful if you do go down a very small hill. It's very slippery. The rocks are not firm, so please be careful if you do that, but that's where you get the best picture. So those are the Yellowstone waterfalls that are right next to the road. You can, as I mentioned earlier, see virtual Yellowstone tours. You can see videos of just about all of these waterfalls in our YouTube channel on YouTube, or if you go to virtualyellowstonetours.com, that's virtualyellowstonetours.com, you can search for the ones you want and just click on it and it'll take you to YouTube. If you would like a guided tour of some of these waterfalls, we do offer tours, which you can see at yellowstonetours.net. That's yellowstonetours.net. We offer more Yellowstone tours than anybody in the world, and they depart from all major western cities, as well as West Yellowstone, Bozeman, Idaho Falls, Rexburg, Jackson, and other regional cities as well. Finally, you can see all of our Yellowstone podcasts or listen to them at yellowstonepodcasts.com. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you make it to Yellowstone one day.